With the sixth pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select, well, no one really knows, but CBS's Charles Davis might have a hunch. He joins the show. Plus, what are the Raiders' biggest needs and which prospects could be the best fit? All questions for our star-studded lineup, including NFL analytics expert Cynthia Frelund, Super Bowl champ James Jones, and Raiders columnist Paul Gutierrez. It's the Raiders Draft Special, and it starts right now. We are getting close. Welcome into the Raiders Draft Special, everybody. I'm Amber Theoharis. The Raiders, they have a new feel, a new minority owner in Tom Brady, a new GM in John Spytek, and a new coach in Pete Carroll, who actually is an old hand at winning the Super Bowl. Plus, there's a new quarterback and Pro Bowler Geno Smith. Even Max Crosby, the star player, has a new deal. And this week, the Raiders will have 9 new draft picks, starting with number 6 overall. So which direction will they go? Well, over the next hour, some of the top draft analysts in the country give us their predictions, starting with my good friend. You can catch him on CBS. He'll be covering the draft for NFL Network, all 7 rounds. Charles Davis, so good to see you, Charles. How are you?
I'm doing great, Amber. It's good to see you again, and thanks for having me on.
Well, it's exciting this time of year, and nobody does it better than you. Can't wait to see you and Daniel Jeremiah up on that stage. In your latest mock draft that's out now, by the way, everybody check it out on NFL.com. You have the Raiders taking Boise State's Ashton Jeanty, and most people do, at the number 6 pick. What will he bring to Chip Kelly's system? Why do you like Ashton Jeanty?
Well, I mean, every adjective I'm sure has been used by now, Amber, and I wish I had a few more words to be more eloquent about him. But when you think about everything he can do with the ball in his hands and when the ball's not in his hands, meaning he can draw attention away from other people to give them a chance to shine as well because of the threat he provides, that gives you a chance to control the football on offense, control the ball game, and tilt things in your favor, in your balance. Well, you mentioned the new head coach, Pete Carroll. That has worked quite well for him in most of his stops. When you think about when he was at the top of his game, whether it was at USC or in Seattle where he won a Super Bowl and played for another one, he had a dynamic running attack. Always had those guys who could move the chains on the ground, take care of the football, and then allow the passing game to flourish off of the play action. That's what Ashton Jeanty gives you right off the top. That threat that you have to recognize and you have to respect on the defensive side of the ball, that would be dynamic for them to start. And guess what? If it's right into what Pete Carroll likes to do as a head coach, I know he's added new tricks, all right? He may be a quote-unquote old dog, but he doesn't stay static. But there are certain things that are near and dear to every coach's heart. I think running the football, being physical, playing great defense will always be a staple of what Pete Carroll does.
And hey, it's been fun to watch the resurrection of the running back position. We saw it kind of slide in priority for so many years. Now with Geno Smith under center now for the Raiders, if they do get Ashton Jeanty, do you expect him to also make a big impact in the passing game? And we saw Geno Smith with kind of those short passes, and we know that Jeanty's a versatile back.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, because being able to catch the football out of the backfield, being able to run routes in one-on-one situations, being that extra receiver is a big part of what we're asking running backs to do in the NFL now. Very rarely are we going to have a lead running back who does not have some proficiency at catching the football. All right. Derrick Henry may be used more in the screen game than anything else. But don't be surprised when he catches a swing pass and then all of a sudden you see the look of terror in the eyes of the defensive backs, like, oh no, he's got a 10-yard run up. I got to go deal with it. That's what he can provide as well. But I think with Jeanty, he'll provide a little bit more than that. He'll be that guy who can run those wheel routes out of the backfield, one-on-ones or little 5-yard outs, those Texas routes that everybody loves to talk about, the Texas and the China routes where they cut inside and make the catches and go. That's what you're looking for. He may not be the primary guy, but he's also not someone you can sleep on coming out of the backfield.
Well, in addition to the Raiders, the Bears and the Cowboys both brought him in for their top 30 visits. You kind of have your finger on the pulse of maybe some trades or the intention of some of these teams to move up or down. Do you think there's a possibility that Chicago or Dallas could try to trade with Jacksonville to jump ahead of the Raiders at 5? Because he did visit with them.
Yeah, Amber, there's no doubt in my mind that if these teams are that interested in Ashton Jeanty, that they will at least have an exploratory phone call with the people in Jacksonville. Now, here's the kicker to the whole thing. The people in Jacksonville may very well have their intent on taking Ashton Jeanty. This is a brand new regime again in Jacksonville, right? You've been in this business a long time, Amber. How many times have you said a new regime in Jacksonville gets started?
Many.
It feels like it's often, right?
Yes.
Many times you've done that.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're back here again, right? Brand new GM and James Gladstone, brand new head coach and Liam Cohen, right? Shad Khan still owns the team, but he's had to make that change in his leadership spots multiple times. What did Liam Cohen do in his 1 year in Tampa Bay as the offensive coordinator?
He ran the football with a rookie.
Ran the football with a rookie running back named Bucky Irving, who was a 4th-round pick. But remember, Rashad White was there as well. So they split time until Bucky firmly took the ball and ran with it. See what I did there? Uh-huh. Now, Liam Cohen, when he was at Kentucky as an offensive coordinator, what did they do? Ran the football behind that big offensive line, the big blue wall, as they like to call it. He's going to want to do that as well. Brand new head coach, big splash, get things started. Oh, by the way, they've got to find a way to get Trevor Lawrence going, their quarterback. We saw flashes, but 2 years ago, we started to think, hey, he's starting to get there. It kind of trailed off in those last 2 seasons. Guess what? One more shot at this thing with a brand new head coach. Sometimes that dynamic running back really helps take pressure off the quarterback. So if you're making those phone calls to Jacksonville, that might be a different response than you may want, because Jacksonville may very well be excited about keeping him themselves.
Yeah, they might not just roll over. Let's talk about another hot name in the draft. We got to talk about quarterback. Cam Ward won't be there at number 6. Shedeur Sanders might be. I want to get your opinion on that. Do you, number one, think he could still be there at 6? And if he is there at 6, do you see the Raiders taking him?
Amber, I'm so glad you asked that question, because for a while I was starting to think that maybe I was really out to lunch on this whole thing, because I've posited this a number of times with different people. And after a while, I started to think, am I really wrong? Because I'm not seeing it a heck of a lot of places. Every now and then you hear a mention. But it makes so much sense to me that if the Raiders are thinking about, look, we've got Geno Smith, who we love, we trust. Our head coach really wanted this guy. He's here. But there is a line of succession. It gives you a chance. And could maybe the best quarterback in the draft, because there are people who have Shedeur Sanders rated ahead of Cam Ward. I know the consensus is Ward 1, Sanders 2, but there are people like Sanders better. Yeah, that's a possibility. And let's go through it very quickly. Let's say we're going to go Ward 1 to Tennessee. We feel like that kind of is locked down unless there's some crazy trade that comes up. And I don't know about you, but I don't see them having the King's ransom that's going to get that done. 2, Cleveland. We've talked about Shedeur Sanders going there from the time this draft started at 2. They are a quarterback-needy team. Feels like that talk is cooled. 3, New York Giants. Joe Schoen, their GM. I don't think any GM has done more work on quarterbacks this year than Joe Schoen did in the offseason, and he may very well pay taxes in Colorado right now with the time he spent watching Shedeur and practicing at games. Still, there's a lot of chatter, as you know, Amber, coming out of New York that, hey, we've signed 2 quarterbacks. We're not going to force the quarterback decision. So let's say that that's cooled. Well, we know the Raiders took at 6 Geno Smith. The Jets at 7 end up taking Justin Fields in free agency. You got to get to 9 with New Orleans, which seems really needy right now with Derek Carr being hurt. But there's always surprises in the first round. Shedeur Sanders to the Raiders makes a lot of sense, right? Didn't he have a 30 visit there?
Yeah,
I believe he did.
Well, also Tom Brady, he kind of grew up with Tom Brady. He was a mentor to him as well. So I'm with you. I think it's more realistic than people think, because you have to remember, if Cleveland and New York are going to pass on, or if they're going to take Shedeur, they're passing on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. I mean, 2 generational type of players. That's a hard thing to do. You have to really love Shedeur. So that's why I think Shedeur could fall down to that 5, where the Patriots don't need somebody at 4. The Jacksonville doesn't need somebody at 5.
And it'd be very interesting to see John Spytek is the new general manager. Pete Carroll's the head coach. The rest of the Raiders brain trust. What is their flavor at that point? And what could really get interesting, Amber, what if Jeanty does go off the board at 5? That's Jacksonville. This thing probably comes even more into focus than what you and I are talking about now. So we shall see.
I like we're on the same page. We're on the same page. Great minds think alike with that one. Now, I do think, though, that it also fits with Pete Carroll because Pete Carroll likes to create competition. He did it with Russell Wilson and Matt Flynn back in the day. It could be a similar situation. So don't say the people that say, oh, they have Geno Smith, they don't need they won't take a quarterback, I think are way off base. Pete Carroll loves competition. Now, let's say that that Shedeur or Gentry is gone at number 6. Do you like Ted McMillan? Do you think that that's somebody that the Raiders could take that high?
Yeah, they absolutely could, and here's why, Amber. When you watch the Raiders play in recent years, who is scaring you out at the wide receiver position that as a defensive coordinator, you got to stay up at night and do a little diagramming, right? Trying to figure out how we're going to slow this guy down. There's respect for the players that they have, but I don't know that there's absolute fear. Brock Bowers had a rookie season for the ages at tight end and essentially became wide receiver 1 for the Raiders last year. They're going to want to take some of that pressure off of him. The top-rated receiver in the draft, Ted McMillan, definitely fits that bill. And this whole idea of when you're grabbing guys, is it too high? Well, I don't know if I like him at 7, but at 6, but I really love him at 12. That doesn't make any sense. If you like a guy, you like a guy. You better take him and go get him. But that helps jumpstart their offense in a big way. And in a sense, Ted McMillan becomes DK Metcalf, who Geno Smith was throwing to last year.
Yeah, you got to like that height advantage as well, especially for those 50-50 balls. Could you see a situation where the Raiders actually trade back from number 6? They have a lot of holes to fill. I mean, I've talked to other people. I always say the running back is kind of like a final position to me when you got a really good line. It's one of the last things. You got a good quarterback, then you got a good running back. They still need a lot of different positions filled because could there be more value in giving up that 6th pick?
Well, there definitely could be. My only question mark on that, of course, is who needs to come up and get someone? Who feels like it? And you mentioned sometimes those players are the pieces that finalize things for you as a franchise, right? Not necessarily the piece that gets you started or an additional piece. Who has to come up and get someone? Is there someone who might be interested in a quarterback at that point? Meaning Shedeur might still be on the board and someone's really interested in coming up to make sure he doesn't get snatched by someone else. If that's the case, I think the Raiders would be happy to listen and add additional draft picks and additional bodies. This is one of those drafts, Amber, where I think a lot of teams are talking about any chance of me moving down on this one?
It's true.
And most teams are saying, and most teams are going, no, because for the most part, the guy you're going to get at a certain number in the first round is going to be very similar to the guy in the 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th round. So that's going to be a little bit different for people this year. But to your point, don't think for a second John Spytek won't have that phone ready and available, and he will hear every ring.
Yeah, and I bet the Saints are the first ones calling, trying to get up there to get a quarterback. So like to go from 6 to 9 is not that big of a drop. As you said, the talent doesn't fall off that much.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think the biggest one, because we always end up talking quarterbacks first about who's going to come up and get the quarterback. I'm glad you introduced the idea that maybe someone comes up to get the runner. Right? Chicago, Dallas, do they come up and do that? But in this situation, if we're talking about the quarterback, all right, Pittsburgh, we know is extremely quarterback needy. All right. 21 to 6, that's a heck of a jump. And that is not something we've seen Pittsburgh do.
That's a lot. They're going to have to give up a lot. John Spytek's going to say, give me your firstborn and what else are you going to give me other than that? So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the defense. The Raiders definitely have some needs on defense, especially at corner. Which defensive players do you think that the Raiders could go defense at number 6? And who could it be?
If they go defense at 6, I think they go big. Amber, I think that, is Mason Graham still sitting there, the big defensive tackle from Michigan? Because if so, that's one of the guys that I think a lot of us kind of mocked along the way, right? I think that you looked at it and said, well, if they wanted to go here, this is a great spot to go. Get him there next to Christian Wilkes. Let's see how we play, right? Again, how did Pete Carroll win ball games? By being stout on defense, all levels, right? Mason Graham may be the highest rated guy sitting there. Could he be the one you go after and go get? Edge rusher to give a compliment to Max Crosby? We'll see, because I know that they like Malcolm Kuntz coming back off of injury. So let's see if that really plays into it, where you'd go that high to get an edge rusher. Who knows at that point? But could you say defender at 6? Absolutely, depending on how this board falls, because there's always surprises. There's always someone going, whoa, what just happened at that pick? And then we have to take off and adjust at that point.
Coming up, who would we draft? Well, we're going to let you know. It's a mock draft with me and Charles Davis next.
Which automaker employs the most hourly workers in the country? Ford. Which automaker assembles the most vehicles in the country? Ford. That's not a coincidence. It's a commitment. A commitment Ford dealers share by offering employee pricing across a full lineup of Ford vehicles.
Now get employee pricing available across a full lineup of Ford trucks and SUVs. Employee pricing, you pay what we pay. Only from your local Ford dealer.
It's in our very nature to find exhilaration in the new, to seek the excitement of the unexpected, an endless yearning to experience what lies beyond the everyday.
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
You've earned this, so hold it up high. You put on the biggest event of the year every single weekend, surviving the strongest storms, meeting chaos with composure. You roll up your sleeves to roll out the red carpet, because the end of the night for you is the beginning of the rest of their lives. You are a fighter, and this is your reward. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
I hope everything goes as planned, so you never end up here. Or here.
I'm injured. We don't know nothing about any of this process.
But when life throws you its worst, you need the best.
I know we couldn't have gotten a better law firm.
The Raiders 2025 Draft Special is brought to you by Knock v. Injury Law, the official law firm of the Raiders, and by your Southern Nevada Ford dealers. How about past day one? The Raiders have 8 picks. Where do you see them going as far as positions? What positions do you think they'll be targeting? Where will they try to find some depth as well, not just starters?
So I think it's a draft where the wide receivers, it's much more of a depth draft than it is a draft where we're going, oh my goodness, look who's playing wide receiver, which sounds funny because almost every year we're going crazy for the receivers, right? But in this year's draft, they're good ones. I don't know that we're clamoring the way we have in the past, but I do think there's plenty of receivers that'll be available as we get deeper into the draft. So that allows the Raiders to go ahead and look in that position. For me, when I look at them and look at them overall as a defense, pick your spot. And again, cornerback, safety, linebacker, whatever your flavor is. And what's funny is you brought up the running backs being devalued. What about the linebackers?
Thank you.
You know, the inside guys, we don't even talk to them, right? They almost never come up. But then we look up and we see the best teams playing, and they have dudes who can play that position. I realize they're smaller than they've ever been. We're not looking at Urlacher size, definitely not looking at Levon Kirkland size. And for anyone who can't remember him, Google him. You'll go, there's a 300-pounder playing inside linebacker? What? We don't have that size anymore, but we do have guys who can run and hit and make plays for you. So I'm eager to see how it all unfolds. And as we get deeper into the draft, we said it's an offensive line, defensive line draft. I do think other positions come into play. Tight end is deep. I do think wide receiver has plenty of depth to it. Corners, not as much, but still some players there. I can't wait to watch this all come off the board.
How about offensive line? I mean, Colton Miller's situation is up in the air right now. It just seems like it might behoove the Raiders to get some depth at offensive line, especially with the young guys that they already have out there in the past couple of drafts.
Yeah, I would agree with you totally. And, it's funny when you talk about that left tackle position, we all go crazy to go get those tackles early, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
But there are guys that play in this league that don't necessarily come off the board in the first round. David Bakhtiari, what round did he come off the board for Green Bay? Fourth round?
Oh, gosh, I don't even remember. Maybe fifth? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, became a perennial all-pro for Green Bay before injuries took over his career. You can find those guys and you can find the depth. I'll just give you a name because I don't think he's going to come off the board in the first round, but I think people will be clamoring for him starting in the second. Ariante Ersary, the left tackle from the University of Minnesota. He's a guy that was discussed possibly being a first rounder earlier in the process. I think that talk is cooled, but wouldn't surprise me at all if in the second round, now the phone's ringing. If for people who really want a left tackle, he may be one of those guys that could come off the board early.
Can never be too deep at offensive line. I want to ask you just a very basic question. Can the Raiders have a successful draft without taking a quarterback? I'm not talking about not taking it at 6, just walking away without anybody, not getting Jalen Milroe in the second or third, or Jackson Dart, or just nobody.
I think that they can. I think that the feel is very simply this, though. We all talk about having extra quarterbacks around. Always say it with the Ron Wolf philosophy. Take a quarterback every draft, right? Doesn't matter what round you're taking him. You take one, you build him in, and so on. And then you remember the quarterbacks he either took or acquired and how they played throughout the league. Okay, all of a sudden you realize Kurt Warner was in Green Bay at one point, becomes a Hall of Famer. Mark Brunell was in Green Bay at one point, becomes a longtime starter and a key player for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Traded for Brett Favre, who had been a second-round pick, and people thought he was going to be a bust because they didn't think he was serious about football. So when you say those things, Amber, I think a lot of people have their eyes on, can we get a quarterback in our camp? You mentioned creating the competition, grooming someone. You may find something there that maybe you didn't know that you had. But can you have a successful draft without one? I think so, because this year's quarterback crop is not one, again, that we are all going bonkers on. The weird part about this is it feels a lot like the Kenny Pickett year, where Kenny Pickett went first in the first round. We kept waiting for Malik Willis's name. We kept waiting for Desmond Ritter's name. Both of them went in the third round. Yeah. And neither has really made its mark so far. Could we have another one of those years? Because we're talking Jackson Dart, right? You mentioned him. You mentioned Milroe, Tyler Shuck coming out of Louisville now. All of them have their charms. How many of them will get into the first round? Is Shedeur a lock in the first round? It feels like it, but there's also that conversation that if it doesn't go here, it doesn't go here, it doesn't go here, right? So who knows how it goes down? But it certainly feels like people may not push the quarterback, because if Cleveland and the Giants don't pick at 2 and 3, then people aren't pushing the quarterback, because those teams are extremely quarterback needy at this point.
That'll be very telling. And I just want to be devil's advocate, though. You say the Kenny Pickett draft in 22. I was there also in 21 with the very hefty quarterback draft where we had 5 guys go, in the top 10 or 15, but barely any of them panned out. There was Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. So sometimes when you think you're going into a deep quarterback draft, they don't turn out. And then sometimes when you think it's not that deep, the guys step up. That's the beauty of the draft. Just 2 more questions for you. One, with John Spytek, we've seen him as an assistant GM. We've seen his talent evaluation, what he did in Tampa. What should Raiders fans look to, some of the choices he made in Tampa, and say, we're in pretty good hands here?
Yeah, I think that when you evaluate that and what he did in conjunction with Jason Light, when you watch how Tampa has built their team, one thing I'm always looking for, and this should probably sound very familiar for Raiders fans, is speed. Mm-hmm. Because they love to have those people who can, it's not just a matter of taking the top off of everything. I'm talking about speed from here to here, right? In the box, right? Short area quickness, being able to make your plays. pressure packages, right? Whether it's on offense or defense. If you think about Tampa last year, and you think about what Todd Bowles loves to do on defense, which is pressure the quarterback all the time. Well, Liam Cohen was essentially doing the same thing on offense with the pressure he put on people. Every snap, you're wondering, okay, where's this ball going? How are they getting there so quickly? What's happening right now? And by the time you realize Bucky Irving was a phenomenon, Tampa was sprinting their way to another division title. So that's one of the things I think about all the time, because Jason Light and John Spytek always found value throughout the draft. When you go back and look at how that team was built, it wasn't all top-heavy first, second round guys who were having impact. Bucky Irving was a fourth rounder last year. That's just one example of it. You remember when they brought in Shaq Barrett? Shaq Barrett had been an undrafted free agent, okay, that had started out in Denver, and they recognized the value, brought him in, and helped run themselves into a Super Bowl. So I like what he has done. I like how he's been, not just trained, but I like his eyes on what he does with ball players. I think a lot of times they see value where other people don't quite get it, but he understands how that value works for his franchise, for his program, for their schemes.
And that's how you create longevity as well as a GM. We see the best ones do that. All right, I want to play a little game with you before I let you leave here. You and I are going to do a little mock draft, just the top 6 picks. Brought to you by your Southern Nevada Ford dealers. I'm going to take 1, 3, and 5. You're going to take 2, 4, and 6. So obviously, mine's easy. Cam Ward goes to the Tennessee Titans. All right, now this is just where you really think. Where do you really think who do you think the Cleveland Browns will take?
At this stage, everything we're hearing, I'm hearing. All right, I'll just leave it with me. I won't put it on anyone else. It feels like Travis Hunter coming out of Colorado and playing receiver first, and then mixing in some defensive back, not the other way around.
Oh, man. Well, then Abdul Carter's there, and you got to take the best player in the draft, right? I mean, that's what the Giants have to do, but this is what I see happening, Charles. I see them taking Shedeur Sanders. I just see, Shane and Dable saying, we might only have 1 year here. We got to save our jobs. We got to get a quarterback, and just reaching. So I see them taking Shedeur, but my goodness, then look who drops to the Patriots.
Where you're going.
Yeah, look who drops to the Patriots.
I like where you're going. And if they're taking Shedeur, that means they've had a really nice conversation with Mr. Mara about, okay, if we're taking quarterback, what does that mean for our futures? Because I think if you see a quarterback go there, it might signal that they may get a little more time to get done what they're going to get done. So I like what they're doing, and right now I'm sure they're both like, I'm cool with that. That works for me. Let's do it. And now we're in New England at 4. And what we're all hearing and what it feels like is offensive line, because their offensive line's been abysmal for the longest time. But you just left Abdul Carter out there. All right, Mike Vrabel coming in as a head coach, Elliott Wolf, who's running the draft, sometimes just go, hold up a second, guys. I know we got to build this line, but you're not going to leave the best player, possibly the best player in the draft out there. So I'm taking Abdul Carter and bringing him to New England.
All right. Yeah, I didn't think you'd let him slide very much. I think at Jacksonville, now there's no trades. We're not allowed to do trades. We're just doing straight up here. So number 5, Jacksonville. I'm going to say they take Walker. I'm at the edge from Georgia. I think that's where a lot of mock drafts have him, but they need some help there on defense. So he's the next best player in my opinion.
I think that's a really nice one, and Jacksonville certainly needs that. That will add to that pass rush that they're trying to generate, right? Because you already have Trayvon Walker. You already have Hines. Oh, my goodness. Josh Hines Allen, or Josh Allen Hines. I can't remember quite what it is. But
you got a lot of names in your head right now.
Get it right before he punches me in the face, but I believe it's Josh Allen Hines. Anyway, that's 2 good edge rushers. You add a third. Nothing wrong with that, right? And Jalen Walker can swing back and play a little linebacker if you absolutely need him to do that. So I like that pick for them. So at 6, we're back to the Raiders. And do I go chalk and just go Genty? I do think they have a big conversation. Do they take a defender here? Is there a possibility? But I think you got to go get Genty and then just build around him. I always think back to the Falcons when they took Matt Ryan and they were supposed to take Glenn Dorsey. And then they've already brought in Michael the Burner Turner out of San Diego from the Chargers as their free agent running back. They went back into the first round to get the left tackle they needed to make it all work, and that was Sam Baker. and that team went 11-5 and went to the playoffs. Thomas Dimitrov making those moves. So sometimes, as you said, it's not the finishing guy, but maybe you get him as a starting guy and you finish around him.
That's right. Charles Davis, you have so much to do this week, and you spent so much time with us, and we are so appreciative of you. Can't wait to see you up on the stage. I'll come say hello in Green Bay.
Can't wait to see you, Amber. Thanks for having me on, and all the best. And always look forward to getting to Las Vegas and seeing the Raiders.
That's right. We're looking forward to it as well. It's a new feel here in Vegas, Charles. All right. Coming up, wide receiver could be a top priority for the Raiders this weekend. Super Bowl champ and former Raider James Jones is up next. He tells us which pass catcher could be perfect in Chip Kelly's offense.
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
It's in our very nature to find exhilaration in the new, to seek the excitement of the unexpected, an endless yearning to experience what lies beyond the everyday.
They end up bringing 6. That means what? One-on-one coverage outside. T-Mac says, I'm going to leave you, Baskerville. I'm going to make you miss.
Welcome back to the Raiders Draft Special. Ted McMillan, he's one of the draft's top receiving prospects who could be there at number 6 when the Raiders are supposed to pick. But do the Raiders need more depth behind Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers? Well, that, of course, is a question for our very own James Jones. You can catch Monday through Friday on FS1's The Facility, plus every Sunday right next to me on Raiders Game Day. JJ, it's good to see you. How are you?
It's good to see y'all too, man. I'm glad I was able to clear my camera so y'all can see me, but it's good to see y'all, man. It's good. Feels like we're almost back.
Almost back. Well, it is a new year. The Raiders have 9 draft picks coming up, but running back, wide receiver, cornerback, it seems like those are the biggest needs, although there are a lot of needs. Do you think that the Raiders are going to target offensive or defensive prospects early, especially at that number 6 pick?
Well, you know, you're talking to an offensive player, so I'm going to say offense. No, I think it's a no-brainer if Ashton Jeanty is there that you take Ashton Jeanty. You get a guy in the backfield to be able to help Geno Smith that can be a coverage dictator. So when he's in the backfield, you know you're going to get one high safety. It's either cover 3 or it's man-to-man. That is going to help you. That is what we've seen the Philadelphia Eagles do with Saquon Barkley. And I know they have a lot of other weapons, but the guy you have to stop first is Saquon Barkley. If we could get a big-time running back in there to be able to be a coverage dictator, it's only going to help Brock Bowers out, Jacoby out, Geno Smith out. So, you know, I would love to see him go there. And then if he's gone and you have to go get a guy like T-Mac, we call him T-Mac around here, man. I've been around T-Mac for a little bit now. I actually was supposed to work him out someday soon here. But really good dude, big play dude. Like, you need a guy that when you have tight coverage, you can throw the ball up to and he can go make the play. And that's T-Mac.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 219 pounds, so tall and lanky, that type of a receiver. And you're talking about Ted McMillan, by the way, T-Mac. That's what people are learning.
Yeah, we call him T-Mac. Yeah.
Well, so you obviously think that taking a wide receiver that high would be good for the Raiders, or are you just saying that could be best player available?
I think it's both. I think it's best player available, and I think it's a need for your football team, right? You have Jacoby, right? We lost Devontae last year. You need another big-time number 2. Well, I even will start with Brock. Brock's your number 1. You have Jacoby. You need another big-time playmaker. If not, it is very easily to double a tight end. A tight end works the middle of the field 80% of the time. It's easy to put safety up over the top, linebacker, a big-time other safety over you to double team you. So you need other guys to free him up as well. So I think it's a need, and I think it's going to be best player available. T-Mac is special. His range is ridiculous. He can run. I think he's a faster football player than he is a 40-yard dash. I don't even worry about the 40-yard dash because we done seen dudes run 4.2 and be weak in the NFL. So T-Mac is one of those guys that can play really, really fast. But not only that, just the 50-50 and the range that he has, I think it'll help Geno Smith out big time.
On the other side of the ball, is there a defensive player that you really like in this draft that you could see the Raiders going with?
The only defender that I can see the Raiders going with, really getting that, really having that high of a pick, I would go secondary. I would go corner. I think this is a really tough, a really good cornerback class. You know, I really love the cornerback out of Michigan, but who knows if those dudes is going to be there around that time. But I would go corner. We are in a passing league, right? We got to be able to cover the pass. We got Max Crosby to get after the passer, but we have to get some dudes out there that can really, truly cover and not zone coverage. Lock up, man-to-man, 3rd down and 5. Let's go. I got you wherever you go to Costco, I go to Costco. You go to the Wynn Hotel, I go to the Wynn Hotel. We need dudes like that can cover. So.
I like that. I think it's going to get interesting if the Raiders do take a quarterback. If Shador is there, or they end up taking him at number 6. Okay, why are you shaking your head? You don't think he'll be there, or you don't want them to take him?
We shouldn't even be thinking about quarterback. We shouldn't even be thinking about quarterback. You got Geno Smith locked up for a couple years. Go build the roster. Go build the roster, and I think that is what Pete Carroll is going to do. Pete Carroll is phenomenal at building rosters, and he starts not with the quarterback, with the roster. He started with Russell Wilson and built a phenomenal roster around him. Russell Wilson turned out to be a really good quarterback, but he has a good quarterback in Geno Smith. Let's build the roster. If you're going to go defense, get a defensive player that's walking out there right now at training camp able to help us win. If it's offense, it's T-Mac, it's Ashton Jeanty. Get a guy out there right now that could go help you win. I don't believe the Raiders are far off with a lot of pieces. If you can hit in the draft, you give yourself a chance, especially if you got a good quarterback like Geno.
All right, so you don't think they need to leave this draft with the quarterback of the future or any quarterback. So if they leave the draft, the Raiders leave the draft with no quarterback, you're okay with that, even in the later rounds? Even if, you get somebody like a Ewers or you get Jackson Dartis sitting there, 2nd, 3rd round, you would pass?
Okay, well, now we got action. Now we got action.
Okay.
Now, if we get into those 2nd and 3rd rounds, and let's say a Jackson Dart or somebody like that is available, I think you have to take him. But I will not be mad as a Raiders fan if we walked out of this draft without a quarterback. We have Geno Smith. I would not be mad if we walked out of the draft without a quarterback. But if somebody falls into your lap in the 2nd or 3rd round that you had a high grade on that can come in there and be able to learn under Geno, I absolutely would take him. But my mindset, if I'm in the draft room, war room of the Raiders, we are building this team. We're not worried about a quarterback. We got our quarterback, and we paid our quarterback. All right, so let's start building this team around him. That's what I would do. Yeah,
but this is Pete Carroll that paid his quarterback and then took a guy named Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, created competition and picked Russell Wilson to start, and a guy that went on to win the Super Bowl with him. So sometimes it might work out if you take one of those guys later, especially if you take like a Ted McMillan. Think about this. If you take a Ted McMillan in the 1st round, hypothetically, and then you have one of those quarterbacks available in the second or third round. You were there for the Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers transition, and then what the Packers did at that time was they drafted you and a bunch of other really good receivers in the first through third rounds over a couple of years. Isn't it important to have your young quarterback with those young receivers? So if you have Ted McMillan, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, don't you kind of need a young guy to grow with them the way Aaron Rodgers did with you?
No, I agree. And that would be a smart plan if it felt like that for the Raiders. I mean, Pete Carroll was truly blessed. He must have been living really, really right, because he was truly blessed to get Russell Wilson in the third round, and you just paid Matt Flynn a whole lot of money, but you get Russell Wilson in the third round, who turned out to be a, all-pro, Pro Bowl player. But yes, I agree with you, Amber. If you get T-Mac in the first round and you're able to get a Jackson Dart or somebody like that may have slid in the second or third round, you absolutely do it, and you can pair them guys for the future. Even if Geno plays well for 2 years, you have a quarterback that you're developing that you can prepare with T-Mac and a bunch of other weapons out there for the future. So if it falls like that for the Raiders, God is good, and I hope it does. But if not, if Jackson Dart somehow goes in the first round and, Shador somehow goes in the first round, because we know a lot of these teams will jump up and just take the quarterbacks just because they need them, not necessarily the value of the quarterback, and they're gone, you build this football team. But if one of those dudes slide, which I do think it is possible, one of those dudes slide into the second round, and if they're right there for the Raiders, I would take them and pair them.
JJ, we all know you're a great offensive mind. I keep saying one day I see you as an offensive coordinator in this league. So let's go to Chip Kelly and what we can predict that he's going to do. We've seen him in the pros. We've seen him in college. We kind of know what a Chip Kelly offense looks like. What type of receiver or running back or skill position players really fit well into what you think Chip Kelly is going to try to do, especially knowing that Geno Smith is the quarterback?
Yeah, well, you got to be fast and smart in Chip's scheme. And what I mean by that is Chip's scheme does not allow one player to play one position. You got to learn all four. You got to learn the X. You got to learn the zebra. You got to learn the Z. You got to learn the F. You got to learn all positions so you can play fast. So if you are a really good route runner and you can catch the ball at the wide receiver spot, then you could fit in Chip Kelly's system. If you're a running back like Ashton Jeanty, because I feel like he can play in any system. It's not too many running backs that can play in any system. You got some downhill running backs. You got some shifty running backs, right? Chip Kelly's offense allows you to do both. So that's why I said if Ashton Jeanty's there, I would go get Ashton Jeanty. But the main thing about his offense and what we're going to see this year is the Raiders is going to play fast. It's going to be a lot of no huddle. It's going to be on the football. It's going to be playing fast. A lot of the communication is going to be in Geno Smith's hands, getting into the right play, into the right run plays, into the right pass plays. You're going to play fast. It's not going to be a lot of trickery. It's going to be, here we come. You better hurry up and get in your defense. And when we go fast, we know you only can get in a couple of defenses. And I think that's what you're going to see from this Chip Kelly offense.
And on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, Pete Carroll, we know what he did with the Legion of Boom. He emphasized taking members of the secondary in his drafts that he was there. Do you see that? Especially, the Raiders have 8 picks in days 2 and 3. So in those 8 picks, do you really see them going very heavy secondary?
I would hope so. I would hope so. Like I said a little earlier, this is a passing league. You have Max Crosby to come get after the passer. We got some good young talent on the defensive line. Get some guys that can cover. And if we can get a couple good guys in the secondary, I'm telling you, if you can hit on the secondary, I mean, we just watched it. We just watched the Philadelphia Eagles have a phenomenal draft. 2 of their best players on defense was rookies, right? You had Cooper DeJean and you had the young cornerback that played really, really well over there for them. So if you can hit in the draft and get some dudes that can cover, I think that's going to be huge for the Raiders. And you got Mad Max coming off the edge. We'll get Wilk back in the middle of the defense. So we should be fine. If we hit on the draft, it should be a pretty good year for Raiders Nation.
All right, JJ, you're never afraid to make a bold prediction. So give me a bold prediction for the Raiders draft, not the draft, the Raiders draft.
Ooh, the Raiders draft in the first round? Or
anything,
just overall?
Entire draft.
A bold prediction. I don't think the Raiders is going to trade back up and try to do anything crazy. I am going to say a bold prediction. Gosh, Amber always put me on the spot.
I have one. If Ashton Jeanty isn't there, I don't know if this is bold because I think it could really happen. I think they trade down out of that spot and as you say, really build the roster, get a bunch of picks. Because you can get a lot of players a little further down. And those Saints are going to be calling a number. Ooh, you want number 9? We need number 6.
When them Saints come marching in, I mean, to be honest with you, that is very bold, because you're gonna have to give up a lot to come up there and get that pick from the Raiders, and that means if you are the Saints, you really, really love somebody. My bold prediction will be the Raiders take Ashton Jeanty, all right, and then you get into later rounds and they trade back up there and they get a big-time receiver.
All right, I like it. James Jones, I know you're not feeling well. Thanks for spending a little time with us. We appreciate it. We'll see you at the draft. You're going to be at the draft, right? You're going back to Green Bay.
I will be there acting a fool.
Have fun, James. Always good to see you. Feel better. Coming up next, she makes draft predictions for a living based on algorithms and equations. So what do the numbers say? NFL media Cynthia Frelund is next, and I'm sure she has percentages to the decimal.
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
Welcome to the new house of Silver and Black, Jack. Boyd Gaming is now a proud partner of your Las Vegas Raiders. And there's one motto: just win, baby. It's the perfect place to kick off a great time. Because with Boyd, every day is game day. So bring your friends, have some fun. But we always bet on black. The Boyd family of casinos, where the Raiders wanna be.
Which automaker employs the most hourly workers in the country? Ford. Which automaker assembles the most vehicles in the country? Ford. That's not a coincidence. It's a commitment. A commitment Ford dealers share by offering employee pricing across a full lineup of Ford vehicles.
Now get employee pricing available across a full lineup of Ford trucks and SUVs. Employee pricing, you pay what we pay. Only from your local Ford dealer.
It's in our very nature to find exhilaration in the new, to seek the excitement of the unexpected, an endless yearning to experience what lies beyond the everyday.
Welcome back. Iowa's Caleb Johnson was one of the Raiders' top 30 visits, and we know that John Spytek has hinted that running back is a priority for the Raiders. But where will he go? Well, that's one of the many predictions we are going to ask NFL media analytics expert Cynthia Frelund, good friend of the show. And Cynthia, always good to see you in the Raiders gear. I love that. We see you all over the national media, but rocking and repping the Raiders today. And I got to ask you, there's so much talk about Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders, but do you think he is going to be available with your predictions at number 6?
I do. I don't think he's going to go at 5. I think he will be around, and I would imagine he's not going to be around much after 6. So that would be kind of my where I think he ends up going. But he's a great player who'd be exceptionally happy to have, especially given some of the question marks on the interior O-line. He will really help make things a lot easier for Gino.
Do you think that Ashton Jeanty is a comparable to another player in the NFL right now? Can you give me a comp?
Well, look, it's hard to give. So me and comps, I always feel like this little asterisk there, because you don't ever have like the comps to, like you give these lofty comps because you don't want to give one that seems medium, but like he has a style that's like LT light. Like, you know, obviously that's a very, 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 we worked with him, LaDainian Tomlinson, and, you know, that's a very lofty comparison. I'm not suggesting he's like already Canton bound, but I think he has that style and type of running situation. And if you're a fantasy football player, you would absolutely want to put him on your team this year. You would have no worries about him being a rookie. So I again, asterisk,
with caution.
Like, but just go in that, yeah, that mold, that type of player, transformative for sure.
All right, well, if they don't land Ashton Jeanty, if the Raiders don't, which running backs do you think Spytek could target, and which round do you see them going after running back?
This is a really deep running back class. I love, like, there's after a while with every class, it becomes a little bit more flavor like. So I do think that, you know, you talk about Caleb Johnson, you talk about any of those guys from Ohio State, they could be there in the second round as well. So if you liked a Quinshon Judkins, who I know has tons of fans around the league, and even Travion Henderson, I think that those guys will be available in the second round as well. So I don't think it's going to be something where, like, no one should freak out if they don't get a running back in the first round. They will still find a lot of value in subsequent rounds. I think it's just now, like, how does this team want to construct the culture of, you know, what is this new regime going to say, like, these are our fundamental values, these are our principles, and that's what they have to construct the team around. And it's also not like a regular year where there's, you know, last year we were really spoiled with tons of not just quarterbacks, but also really strong wide receiver class. This isn't as strong in either of those two positions. So, and you don't need tight end. So don't be, you know, weirded out when you're like, oh, there's like all these running backs going in the first round. That's not very analytics. Like, it's a function of supply and demand.
There's plenty to go around. You mentioned Chip Kelly in Ohio State, fresh off the national championship as the offensive coordinator, and you just mentioned some running backs, Ohio State. But could you see the Raiders kind of focusing on some other prospects from Ohio State, regardless of position, just because of the Chip Kelly connection? There's some top prospects in the first couple rounds.
Well, if you think about it this year compared to even most years, we're seeing the confluence of NIL, the COVID years, and the transfer portal all in one, right? And so some of these guys, like, you know, Tyler Shuck from Louisville, the quarterbacks, like, he played with Justin Herbert, mind blown, at Oregon a billion years ago. So you're seeing like this confluence of players, which means it's harder to get accurate scouting reports, which means if you have a guy like Chip Kelly who has one-on-one relationships with the O-linemen, for example, things of that nature, and he knows exactly what they're able to learn and how, it just shortens the learning curve between entering the NFL and being an effective player in the NFL, especially for the guys who aren't necessarily first-round draft picks. So I think it's a huge advantage, especially from a program like Ohio State, where you have just, I mean, the number of Ohio State kids is crazy. Like, it's really only Big Ten and SEC anymore. And when I say Big Ten, I mean like 3 or 4 schools in the Big Ten and then 3 or 4 schools in the SEC.
Yeah, Power 2 conferences, it seems like it's becoming. And you mentioned the offensive linemen out of Ohio State. Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson both have a first to second for Jackson round grade. Do you think that the Raiders need to focus on offensive line? Colton Miller's situation is unknown at this point.
Yes, unless there's really only two teams in the entire league that maybe can get away with not focusing on the O-line, those two being the Eagles and the Lions, so no one anywhere near you. But ultimately, you're playing in the AFC West, and that is not an easy division, and it is specifically not great. This is a Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere. Justin Herbert's not going anywhere. The Broncos have now made the playoffs with Bo Nix, so it's not getting easier here. So start with the trenches. You already have Max Crosby as the anchor of the defense. There's a lot of smart things going on in the defense. Like, give the O-line, just give the quarterback a chance, because I think this coaching staff can make magic happen. You just need to help him. Trenches are huge. Even though we saw Geno be good under a bunch of pressure last year up in Seattle, don't make the man run for his life.
What scenario, Cynthia, do you think the Raiders move out of 6? In what scenario could you see them saying, you know what, we're either going to go up or we're going to go down?
If something happens and there's this like run on tight ends, like for example, like, the Penn State tight end, Tyler Warren, you guys don't need to really worry about this because you got, the best one there already.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if he goes higher than people expect, or, if it kind of goes chalk to begin with, so, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and then something strange happens, like we see a bunch of, maybe defensive ends already, there's a run on defensive end, and you could say we'd trade back just a little bit. Maybe a Pittsburgh wants to come up for a quarter, something where I don't think up, but I think down is possible.
Yeah, I said the same thing. All right, finish this question for me, or finish this statement, I should say. The Raiders draft will be successful if...
They get day 2 right.
Yep,
Day
everybody
2 is
focuses on number 1. Day 2 is a lot of picks.
I think day 2, it's a lot of picks. And it's also where the glut in this draft is, right? Like, these may not be guys who are all pros for 17 years. Okay, I'm being dramatic, but these are the guys who are playing the majority of the snaps on your team and need to be not just role players, but difference makers in the system that Pete Carroll wants to run. So day 1, okay, obviously everyone would like to be right with their first round pick, sure. But get day 2 right, then you get a number of players in your system that are better than average. That's where you change things fast if you're a Raider.
All right, well, Cynthia, we always appreciate your analysis. And if the Raiders do take a corner at number 6 in the first round, just remember you heard it here first from Cynthia Frelund and me as well, because I could see that happening. Cynthia, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Happy draft. I'll see you in Green Bay.
Thanks for having me.
Ahead on the Raiders draft special, the Raiders went best player available in 2024, and boy, did Brock Bowers pan out. But what will the approach be this year? Could they draft for need? Raiders columnist Paul Gutierrez breaks it all down next. This segment of the Raiders 2025 draft special has been brought to you by Karma Automotive, official luxury electric vehicle of the Las Vegas Raiders.
You've earned this, so hold it up high. You put on the biggest event of the year every single weekend, surviving the strongest storms, meeting chaos with composure. You roll up your sleeves to roll out the red carpet, because the end of the night for you is the beginning of the rest of their lives. You are a fighter, and this is your reward. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
Welcome to the new house of Silver and Black, Jack. Boyd Gaming is now a proud partner of your Las Vegas Raiders. And there's one motto: just win, baby. It's the perfect place to kick off a great time. Because with Boyd, every day is game day. So bring your friends, have some fun. But we always bet on black. The Boyd family of casinos, where the Raiders want to be.
Every year, millions fly with us at Allegiant because together, we go places. We see old friends and try new things. We laugh. We really like to laugh. And reconnect. We remember. And we wander, which leads to wonder. From how we go to where we go to what we do when we get there, we go further together.
I hope everything goes as planned, so you never end up here. Or here.
I'm injured. We don't know nothing about any of this process.
But when life throws you its worst, you need the best.
I know we couldn't have gotten a better law firm.
It's in our very nature to find exhilaration in the new, to seek the excitement of the unexpected, an endless yearning to experience what lies beyond the everyday.
The Raiders 2025 Draft Special has been brought to you by Knock v. Injury Law, the official law firm of the Raiders, and by your Southern Nevada Ford dealers. Now in his 21st season covering the silver and black, we say hello to Paul Gutierrez, who is now on the dark side. Welcome, Paul. Congrats on your announcement that you are joining the Raiders. Good to have you with us as a columnist.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Amber. It's kind of a mind-blowing kind of a thing here for me. It's a team that I grew up watching. You know, you had to kind of put that fandom to the side when you're covering them, and you kind of still have to at this point too, because you're covering the team, but you're covering the team for the team. So yes, I'm a member of the dark side. That's why I wore the darker sweater here today for us, anyways. But it's the beginning of a new year, beginning of a new generation. You got a new minority owner, Tom Brady. You got a new GM, John Spytek, new head coach, Pete Carroll, and you know, myself, I'm a very small guppy in this big ocean here of Raider Nation, but I'm glad to be joining as well.
Well, we're excited to have you, and you've covered so many different Raiders drafts, NFL drafts, and as you know, every GM kind of has a draft philosophy. You've got the best player available guys, the stick to your board guys. You got the draft for need guys. What do you think John Spytek's philosophies will be?
Yeah, that's really the big $1 million question coming in this draft, because we don't have a track record for him, right? He's never been in this seat before. He's never done this. I asked him the other day about paying his dues over a couple of decades, and he corrected me. He said, only 2 decades. I'm like, well, decade, you know, whatever, it's plural. But we don't know exactly what he's going to do. He did give some clues, though, that he doesn't shy away from taking running backs early. Now, whether that's a smokescreen, whether that's showing his hand a little bit, we don't know. We won't know until it comes time. The one thing he did say, though, in his pre-draft presser was that he had not received any phone calls yet from teams inquiring, wanting to trade up, trade with him. So if it is a best player available versus a specific need, maybe Ashton Jeanty checks both of those boxes.
That was my next question to you. It really seems like where most of the mocks have the Raiders at number 6 with Ashton, paired with Ashton Jeanty. Is it kind of that rare situation where he just might be the best player still available, and he's also a big need for the Raiders?
Yes. Yeah. We'll just say yes. He checks that box. I mean, It's a very simple question. But at the same point,
what makes him so great for them?
Yeah, at the same point, because he fits that need. They need that, especially with what Pete Carroll wants to do on offense, what Chip Kelly wants to do as an offensive play caller. They want to control the ball. With Geno Smith, the new quarterback also, they want to set up the play action. So if you've got a running back that can dominate in the line of scrimmage, again, you need that help in the offensive line, then that's a game changer for you. And running backs, the position has been devalued of late. Another thing that Spytek talked about was he doesn't understand why that's the case, because you saw exactly what Saquon Barkley did for the Philadelphia Eagles last year and running them to a Super Bowl. So that's why he checks those boxes. The intriguing thing here, though, is what if there's another team behind the Raiders that wants to draft up or trade up to get that draft pick, and then the Raiders move back a couple of slots and then get extra picks, because because another thing that Spytek talked about was the gap between, say, for example, the number 1 running back and the number 2, number 3 running back is not that big. If it was a bigger, wider gap, then you might say, okay, we got to take that guy at that spot. But if you think that the guys are kind of similar there, then you're okay trading back. So again, a lot of words to say yes.
So you mentioned Saquon Barkley, and not that that would be a comp for me, but only 2 running backs have been selected in the top 10 since 2018, Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley. If the Raiders do take Genty at 6, do you think we can expect similar output and usage to those running backs the way, the Giants are one story, but what we saw with the Eagles and Barkley, and then the way Robinson was just able to come in and be effective with the Falcons?
Well, what you really need to do at that point, and this is something that I would do and I would encourage everybody to do, right, is to dig into Chip Kelly's tape of his past few years, whether he was at Ohio State, UCLA, or even more probably better when he was in the NFL, just to see exactly how he used his running backs. And then also see what Pete Carroll did. Pete Carroll had a pretty good running back in Seattle when he was winning the Super Bowl, in a former Raider as well in beast mode, Marshawn Lynch. Again, there's not really a comp that I would put for Ashton Genty. I kind of see a little bit of MJD there, but kind of more powerful, faster than MJD. But he does control the ball. He does control the line of scrimmage. The one thing that I would like to see more of, though, and there's not a lot of tape on it, is him actually being a receiver. He did catch a lot of passes at Boise State. And as a UNLV alum, I watched a lot of Rebel football last year, and they kept him in check per se. But a lot of his pass catching was out in the flat where they were just kind of dumping the ball off to him. I like to see him more involved down the field, catching balls that way as well. And
I'm kind of digressing here, but with Genty being 5'8.5", you mentioned MJD. I worked with him very closely at NFL.
Yep.
And I can remember having a conversation with, at the time, Willie McGinnis, who was a great linebacker. And I said, who was one of the toughest running backs to tackle? And he said, it's actually that guy sitting right next to us here on this desk, MJD, because he's so low to the ground. And we have these big, tall linebackers. It's hard to get down. And so I think that's what makes Genty so difficult to tackle, and why he could be such an asset is kind of the shortness. Is an asset. And you talk about Pete Carroll, you talk about his running backs. His teams also have great secondaries, right? With the Legion of Boom, went to the Super Bowl twice. So do you think he will influence Spytek and the team to draft more secondary players, especially, in that second round?
Oh, absolutely. And if it's not the second, then it's the third round. It's the fourth round. It's the fifth round. They have all these picks where they're rebuilding this roster. So you're going to see exactly a vision working. They're doing a collab, right? As the kids say, they're working on a collab. It's Pete Carroll and John Spytek with a little bit of spice from Tom Brady, with Mark Davis, sitting in the back of the room, kind of saying, okay, let's do this, that, and the other. Yes, I do believe we're going to see that. They're not going to try to completely recreate the Legion of Boom, but you're going to see some flavors of that. You're going to see some things there, and they need to, really, because the defense needs an overhaul. It needs an infusion of players as well. So look for big, fast, athletic cornerbacks in the draft. But then again, I think 31 other teams would like that as well.
Everybody's looking for that. How telling will the 6th pick, how much will you be watching that 6th pick to really try to gauge what the Raiders' plans will be for the remainder of the draft?
Well, that's where it all starts, especially for this new regime. And it seems, it's kind of an annual thing here with the draft. It's always the beginning of the year, so to speak. Last year, like I said earlier, we don't have a track record here to kind of predict and make an educated guess on what John Spytek's going to do, or even what he wants to do, because he hasn't been in this position before. But even last year, with the former regime, I was one of the people in the media room with my hands on my forehead going, why are they drafting a tight end? They already have a second-round tight end. I was wrong. A lot of people were wrong because they used that pick. And this regime should thank the previous regime for getting them a first team all-pro tight end. It's not only that, but also a building block going forward. So yes, whoever they pick at 6, or if they trade back, that's going to tell the tale of what the rest of the draft, not only the draft, but what the offseason and what the plans are for this coming season are.
Let's talk about the Raiders' offensive line. It's kind of a storyline that's going under the radar, but with the Colton Miller situation up in the air right now, do you really think that the Raiders are going to be looking to draft someone for the future to help establish that young core of O-linemen next to JPJ and DJ Glaze?
They have to. They literally have to, because you need to get those tackles in there. You need to get those guards in there. They were active a little bit in free agency on the offensive line, especially on the interior. But with the Colton Miller situation, he's getting a little older. And again, the one thing to get panicky fans to kind of relax a little bit, this is the voluntary portion of it. And yet we do know what's going on contract-wise here as well. So there's always an opportunity here to add bodies. And that, again, is one of the things. If Spytek and Pete Carroll see that the gap between the top 2 tackles and the 3rd and 4th tackle is not that wide, then maybe that's what they do. Maybe there is that opportunity to trade back, and then you get additional picks, and then you get some offensive linemen, cornerbacks that way, what we just talked about. So they definitely have to. There's needs all over the place. And then I go back to this, Amber. I know I'm kind of talking a little bit here, but I go back to a conversation I had with Tom Flores many, many moons ago, where he said, look, if you're drafting in the top 10, you don't have that luxury of drafting for either specific need or best player available, because if you're in the top 10, you've got needs all over the field. So go get the best player you possibly can. And you saw that's what the Raiders did last year with Brock Bowers. And
the Raiders need some starters. I mean, we've barely even spoken about linebacker in this show. With Robert Spillane gone, Divine Diablo gone, do you see linebacker being a priority? I mean, nobody's talking about it.
Has to be, because that's the quarterback of the defense, right? I mean, I think we know who's going to wear the green dot or what they're going to do out there. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny. We could just kind of check all the boxes and see, okay, who are somebody that they can. Now, I don't think they're going to get a linebacker at number 6.
No.
I don't think they'll even look at a linebacker in the second round. It's probably a day 3 heavy and getting a lot more picks, trading back, getting more picks, and feeding the roster that way. So, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The defense. The biggest thing that they have going for them on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, is Max Crosby, getting him back, and Christian Wilkins being healthy. But also under the radar here is Patrick Graham coming back as the defensive coordinator and the play caller. So there's some continuity there that they can work with. Now, if you add some bodies to that and everybody buys into this system, whether it's the resurrection of Legion of Boom 2.0 or just, hey, Max Crosby and the fellas, that's what they need to do on draft day, is just keep adding bodies and guys that check the box per what John Spytek is talking about heading into the draft.
And I'm looking forward to seeing Jacorian Bennett healthy as well on that defense. So there are pieces. There just needs to be more, as you say. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is there a bold prediction that you have for the Raiders draft? Or don't be surprised if you see blank.
Yeah, you know what? My bold prediction is that they're going to sit tight and they're going to draft Ashton Jeanty at 6, because that's what they should do, right?
Yeah.
But in years of covering this draft and covering different teams, you see a lot of teams overthink it. My bold prediction is they will not overthink it, and they'll just take Ashton Jeanty, who checks the box as best player available and fills a specific need. That's my bold prediction, and it's not that sexy, but
Isn't that something, though? Just the thought of that, just doing what you're kind of supposed to do. I mean, who would have thought of that? So many GMs do overthink it. Paul Gutierrez, we thank you so much for being here with us, and again, glad to have you here on our side with the Raiders team. Looking forward to this season.
Amber, thanks for having me.
Coming up next, we'll look back at what the Raiders did the last time they had the 6th overall pick in the draft.
Which automaker employs the most hourly workers in the country? Ford. Which automaker assembles the most vehicles in the country? Ford. That's not a coincidence. It's a commitment. A commitment Ford dealers share by offering employee pricing across a full lineup of Ford vehicles.
Now get employee pricing available across a full lineup of Ford trucks and SUVs. Employee pricing, you pay what we pay. Only from your local Ford dealer.
You've earned this, so hold it up high. You put on the biggest event of the year, every single weekend. Surviving the strongest storms, meeting chaos with composure. You roll up your sleeves to roll out the red carpet, because the end of the night for you is the beginning of the rest of their lives. You are a fighter, and this is your reward. Modelo, the mark of a fighter.
lot of mock drafts have Ashton Jeanty going at number 6 to the Raiders. And the last time the Silver and Black had the 6th pick back in the 1988 NFL draft, they found a franchise player who would end up in the Hall of Fame. Here's legendary Raiders wide receiver Tim Brown's My Draft Story.
Tim Brown, Heisman Trophy winner in '87 at Notre Dame.
To be drafted by the Raiders, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I was in my little cubby apartment in South Bend, Indiana, brother, waiting for a phone call to come. But yeah, it was just 8, 9, 10 people in a room, just waiting to get a phone call. It was really important for me to get to a team that didn't need a savior as a receiver right off the bat. My last year at Notre Dame, I was in a wishbone offense. I was a running back. I knew that was a place I could go and learn, and I wasn't going to have to play day one. So I was pretty excited to get to the Raiders. These new guys who come in, they need to take them back to El Segundo. They need to see where we came from. They need to see the whole building in Oakland. They need to understand what we had and what we were working with, and why when we make certain comments, why we're making those comments.
You know, I don't know what my agent Marvin Demoff did to get me to the Raiders, but some kind of way he got me to the Raiders, because that was a team that we figured I could excel in. Great players allow their fans to remember their great plays. The great players remember the plays that they did make. And that was something that stuck with me my whole career.
That'll do it for us. Be sure to tune in to our Raiders official YouTube page, as well as all Raiders outlets, for live updates on the 2025 NFL Draft, kicking off this Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific. Enjoy the draft, everyone.